We are talking today with Michael Ventura, and we're going to be discussing Nicolas Roeg and uh, Bad Timing and Don't Look Now, and maybe some other movies by Nicolas Roeg. So take it away, Michael.
Well, it's interesting, Bad Timing and Don't Look Now, and to discuss them now, because they're two movies that impressed me tremendously, and at the same time, I haven't been able to look at either one of them again.
Yeah.
Uh, and 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 that speaks well of them. I mean, I'm not trying to turn anybody off on them, but in and it's interesting their place in Nicolas Roeg, because it's like Bad Timing is 73, and then soon after, I guess Walkabout was before that. It was Walkabout, Bad Timing, The Man Who Fell to Earth. I mean, Walkabout, Don't Look Now, The Man Who Fell to Earth, and Bad Timing. Bad Timing was 80. And Walkabout and The Man Who Fell to Earth have a lot in common. Bad Timing and Don't Look Now have a lot in common. And Bad Timing and Don't Look Now, or we should be saying Don't Look Now and Bad Timing, because that's the chronological order. They are sinister in a way that only one other film I know is sinister, and I've never heard that film mentioned by anybody but John Cassavetes, and it's Images by Robert Altman, which is a film that I don't know whether Altman had seen Roeg, but the first time I saw Images, I saw it, and I only saw that once. So the only time I saw Images, I saw it on TV, and I thought it was a Roeg film. I was very surprised to learn it was an Altman film. I tuned it in just after the beginning, and so I didn't see the credits. But in any case, I can't think of a more sinister movie in even Hitchcock than Don't Look Now. In Don't Look Now, it begins with these two people losing, in a sense, everything. I mean, their child dies, their daughter, who's about 6 or 7, you'd say, maybe 8. This horrible thing, an accident. And then they go to Venice, which is a very strange choice as far as I'm concerned, because though I don't know many people who've been to Venice, everybody knows what Venice looks like. Venice has that quality of everybody's seen it in some way. The canals, the gondolas, the bridges, the buildings. I'm sure there's a lot more to that city than that, but that's what we know. That's what we see, and it is. It's as though designed to be this mysterious and highly unusual model of what they call in psychology the unconscious, as though it's as though Venice is created by a bad dream, and that atmosphere becomes so palpable with Roeg's cinematography. I'm trying to find a word and I can't find it. The constrictedness of the place. The
Claustrophobia.
Yes, the claustrophobia. Thank you. It's the most claustrophobic place I've ever seen. The smells of the place, because you could just about smell it when you see it the way Roeg photographs it. Because the water, the garbage, the narrowness of the pathways, the sense of stone all around. The buildings of stone, the stone under your feet. So stone and water. It's very, very elemental, primitive, and ancient. It's like it's much more ancient than the city itself, and it actually is. And they go there. Ostensibly, Donald Sutherland, the father, has a job. He's renovating a church, which is also it's a very interesting thing for this character to be doing. He's renovating a church, but he doesn't actually believe in the mysterious. And when these two old women, who seem, intelligent and sensible, when they tell he and Julie Christie, his wife, that if they don't get out of Venice, he's going to die. The Donald Sutherland character is going to die. And they keep seeing somebody who could be a vision of their daughter in a red, small person, blondish, you see her face in a red raincoat. And they're completely, they're understandably skeptical, the Julie Christie, Don Sutherland characters, and yet their very skepticism drags them into the mystery with disastrous consequences. And somehow it's impossible watching the film not to identify with it. I found it so. Caught somewhere between belief and skepticism, saturated with the sinister sense of it, and when you watch a movie, you become. This is going to sound funny coming from me. When you watch a movie, you become very bourgeois in the sense that you just want things to turn out right. You want these. You want justice. You want all the nice things to want, and you want those characters to come through. There's this great desire, especially in a drama, for the characters to come through. But this is a film in which there are no bad guys, except, of course, a serial killer who's having, I don't want to say his or her, its way with Venice at that moment. So, and you can't really call, or I can't really call, out and out madness bad. You certainly can't call it good. It's a phenomenon. It exists. It's like a force of nature. It's like calling a thunderstorm good or bad, or a tornado good or bad. It's bad if you're under it. And so the film, for me, was this elemental immersion in something very forceful, very sinister, something you feel out there in the world. I don't like to call it evil. It's a concept that gets spread around too much. But the mechanism isn't really the evil in this picture. It's Julie Christie and Donald Sutherland portray people who can't credit not just mystery or ESP or whatever you want to call it, but can't credit their own feelings. They start feeling all this buildup of terror, and they act as though it would be irrational to act upon this feeling of theirs. And I was very impressed with that, and I see that in both these films. So give me your take. What 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 you're doing in your mind with Don't Look Now? Because bad timing is a very similar but different subject.
The sorry if you're getting that. There's this weird alert on my computer, so if it's coming through, sorry about that. But I well when I first saw it, I kept thinking of why is this movie called Don't Look Now, and then when I finished watching it, I saw that the one of the themes of the movie is different kinds of sight and different kinds of perception, and the uh, the beginning when the little girl dies, it occurs because the mother's not keeping an eye on the child, right?
Right.
Or both of them aren't keeping an
Mm-hmm.
eye on the child,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's these there's the blind sister, but she has a kind of clairvoyance, so she has a kind of deeper sight, um,
Mm-hmm.
and I kept thinking that, and during watching the movie, and there's a scene in the movie where they're walking down one of the sidewalks in Venice, and behind them there's this optician's shop keeps appearing, and there's just these little signals in the movie that the movie is, and it's got like a big on the sign, it's a big picture of glasses, and just throughout the
Mm-hmm.
movie, that idea of of sight, physical sight, and then perception, and then how the apparent is very elusive, like how they think it's their daughter running around, but it's actually this
Mm-hmm.
the dwarf killer,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't really, I couldn't really figure out what exactly he's trying to say about sight, except maybe the 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 undependability of what we think is apparent, and that
Mm-hmm.
the apparent is temporal and elusive, um, and the blind woman is the one that knows what's going to happen, right? Like she know, like the
Yes. Yes.
yeah, and so that was kind of the theme I thought of the film, was just the elusive nature of what we think is apparent, and different kinds of vision, I guess. And it was a, a claustrophobic portrayal of Venice, for sure. And I sometimes think that there's this kind of contest between, especially different British filmmakers, of how they portray Venice, because it's shot in so many different ways. When I was talking to Tony Palmer, and he made in Wagner, he has a bunch of scenes of Venice and that, and then he made a version of Death in Venice too, and so he filmed there a lot, and yeah, this is a definitely like a different version of Venice, but yeah, I think that there's so many different ways to film Venice, and it's kind of Rogue's version of his version of Venice, and giving a totally different version of it that's not romantic, or it's not showing like the open spaces of Venice,
Mm-hmm.
and the
Mm-hmm.
skies, and everything. It's a very claustrophobic and labyrinth like vision of Venice, and where things kind of appear out of nowhere and then disappear, and there's all these shadows, and the getting back to the sight, though, that Donald Sutherland character, and his reluctance to see what's before him, and his and his reluctance to to give credit to some kind of second sight, or something
Mm-hmm.
beyond physical sight. And I think that kind of pertains to why he's working in that church, but he's there. Aren't they working on a fresco, or something
Yes, a
on the
mural.
wall?
Yes.
Yeah, a mural on the wall of the church. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's that whole episode where he that whole episode in the church where he's hanging by the rope and yeah. So yeah, that's kind of my take on it. That seemed like the theme of it. Another thing about this movie is I thought it was one of the best sex scenes I had ever seen in a film, and I'm not sure how that fits into the film. um, Obviously, Nicolas Roeg gets something out of actors that's very special. I think
Yeah.
he could take even a second-rate actor and somehow bring something very genuine out of them. But I think that especially that the sex scene between Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie is probably one of the best, most genuine sex scenes I've ever seen in a film.
Yes. Yes, it really, it doesn't look acted, and it doesn't look exaggerated. It's very, very hard to film passion, but it looks passionate.
Yeah. And he does that in other movies too, like in but not in the he shows different things in the sex act, but genuinely, like in The Man Who Fell to Earth, with the Rip Torn character, and how he's having these kind of tawdry liaisons with his students, and he portrays that very well. And then in Bad Timing, he really shows like the sinister aspect of sex.
Yes.
But I really thought that sex scene, it gives a depth to those two characters that wouldn't be there otherwise, without
I agree.
it.
Yes. You talk about seeing and the detail of the optician. I'm getting the word wrong again.
Optometrician.
Optometrist. Yes,
Optometrist.
that one. And the detail of that shop.
Yeah.
And seeing, because the whole basis of the story is that they don't see their daughter.
Right.
They've looked away from their daughter at the same time. And I was hesitant to say accident when I mentioned it, because there are different classes of accident. There's, the irresponsible or distracted driver cruises through a stop sign and hits you, and there's nothing you could do about it. But this was an accident that didn't have to happen. This was an accident where both the parents had a duty that neither one fulfilled, and it took both of them not to fulfill it, and the child dies. So the first victim in this film, genuine victim, is the child, and they are trying to get over that dereliction, and still they can't connect enough with their feelings, except in bed. And it's part of what makes it so powerful, I think, because otherwise they're literally running from their feelings. They're getting away from their home environment to get away from what happened. They're feeling the unease of their circumstance, of what's going on, and yet they're staying. They've been warned, and yet they don't credit the warning. Where are they genuine, except in the love scene, the sex scene? Otherwise, they're walking around disconnected from themselves. And I think, excuse me, I think that's a theme in those four great Roeg films, that this disconnection from the disconnect between one's inner life and one's actions, and the disconnect on such a scale, really, that it has fatal consequences.
Right. Yeah.
And don't look now.
So
That
it's like they're not accidents. There's there's no accidents. It's almost like the occurrences happen because of the disconnect. The disharmony happens because of the disharmony between the people. It's like a reflection of their own disconnect. Lack of sight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think, just speaking personally in my own case, I think that really scared me. You know, I guess I saw it in the theater in '73 when it came out. I wasn't a film critic yet, and so I was just going to the movies, and I was a big Julie Christie fan, and unashamed to admit it, and the disconnect really scared me. It wasn't the special effects that scared me, and I wasn't conscious enough at the time to understand that. Oh, maybe I'm looking at my own disconnects. Maybe this is scaring me because of my own disconnect. I couldn't go that distance at the time. But when I think about the movie, I think about why didn't I ever see that movie again? I respected it so much. And you suggested we do these pictures. I went, oh, this is interesting. I'm being suggested we talk about two pictures I can only see once. and so that's what I came up with in terms of Don't Look Now. Bad timing. You talked about Nick Roeg getting performances out of people. There he's working with Art Garfunkel, who wasn't an actor.
Yeah.
Has never been an actor. And the choice of Art Garfunkel, I mean, he had to. He must have really sought him out, because Art Garfunkel, I don't think ever had pretenses to acting.
He was in Carnal Knowledge, wasn't he?
That's right, he was in Carnal Knowledge, I think, which was
that a Nicolas?
Around the same time.
Who directed that?
Let's find out. Hold on a second. Who directed that? Carnal Knowledge. Boy, speaking of films that I haven't seen again, that's another one. But while can't do this on the radio. Wait a second. In any case, Art Garfunkel, and that was '71, and that was Mike Nichols, of all people.
Oh, right, yeah, okay, yeah.
That was Mike Nichols. Wow. And in fact, Roeg may have gotten some of his cinema hints from Nichols in Carnal Knowledge, because visually, the way they use color is similar, if my memory suffices. The way they use close-ups is similar. In any case, with Bad Timing, are we ready to switch to Bad Timing?
Yeah, sure.
You've got Art Garfunkel, who'd been in Carnal Knowledge 2 years before, and you've got
9 years before.
9 years before. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Sorry. and you've got Teresa Russell,
Yeah.
and I think she'd been in a couple of movies. I know she was in Elia Kazan's movie of
Yeah.
The Last Tycoon.
Right. She was in Straight Time with Dustin Hoffman.
I didn't see that. And she'd never taken on a part like anywhere near like what she did in Bad Timing. But when I saw Bad Timing, I thought she was going to be a star.
Yeah.
Because she just leaps out of that picture. Very much like Julie Christie leapt out of her. The first time I ever saw her was in a black and white English film called Billy Liar, which is kind of a sweet film. You know, there's nothing sinister about that one. Where she plays Tom Courtenay's, not exactly girlfriend, but obsession, but in a gentle way. Whereas in Bad Timing, obsession is if not the theme, at least the engine that both people, I think, fall into. You have Art Garfunkel as a kind of Freudian American psychologist in Vienna, another town that is pretty unfamiliar to Americans, and Teresa Russell. I forget how they meet, but he gradually, Art Garfunkel, the psychiatrist, gradually manipulates her into committing suicide or trying to commit suicide. And then you have Harvey Keitel as a cop, and you get nationalities all screwed up here because Harvey Keitel is a cop. I'm sorry. Fill me in on where, because the movie is in Vienna, but it's also in New York, right?
It's in Vienna. It's only in New York at the end, at the very end.
At the end,
I think.
Right.
And then, but it
that's
begins.
the scene that,
It begins with I think it's Denholm Elliott
mm-hmm.
driving her. I'm not sure if he's driving her from East Germany into Austria.
Mm-hmm.
I think. Yeah. So the main part of it is in Vienna. I think.
We're both coming short on this one.
Did you hear me?
I did. I couldn't hear you. No.
Oh, it begins with Denholm Elliott driving her from I think East Germany into Austria over that bridge.
Right.
So I think the main part of the movie takes place in Vienna. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you,
Okay.
but I'm coming up cold on this one. Why did you think of this movie this time?
Just because we were doing Nicolas Roeg movies, and
Mm-hmm.
those two movies are probably, I think, his best movies. I like Bad Timing a lot. I like Teresa Russell a lot. I think that he got a really good performance out of Art Garfunkel. Art Garfunkel's girlfriend killed herself while he was filming this movie.
Oh my God.
Yeah, she OD'd herself while she was in New York at his apartment and killed herself at his apartment while he was filming the movie in Vienna. and she had been in a few movies. She was in a movie called Cockfight with Warren Oates and
Hmm.
and Two Lane Blacktop, and yeah, so it's a very strange coincidence, but there's a lot in this movie, and there's so much different little weird scenes where he's trying to get something across. There's one scene where Art Garfunkel is placing a picture of a labyrinth on his wall, and
Hmm.
then it cuts to um, Harvey Keitel taking the same picture off the wall in his house and putting it on a shelf or putting it in a closet. I don't know what that means, but this movie is like full of things like that. Some of the things I could kind of come to a solid interpretation of them, but other things I still had to kind of dwell on. But I think the all around theme of the movie is you've got this really Freudian, analytical, materialistic, and by Freudian I mean attributing all human function to animalistic qualities
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
biological qualities, and not, there's no
Hmm.
like divinity like dictating anything in your life, um, and and then you have this woman who's just totally kind of I mean, you could call her a free spirit, I guess,
Hmm.
and isn't analyzing everything. And at one point, she writes him a note saying, "Can you can you can you love me more and understand me less?" And he just and he continues to just try and analyze her and work her out. And the more he does that, the more she sees other men and just leads this more. She's doing what something her inner person is telling her to do. And sometimes, there's like a devil on her shoulder and an angel on her
Hmm.
shoulder.
Hmm.
I also think there's a whole other subtext to this movie that Nicolas Roeg is trying to get across in kind of a underhanded way, which is the part of it is the objectification of women for sure, um,
Hmm.
and but a more acute aspect of it is the kind of the Hollywood habit for just for like destroying these blonde women, these kind of innocent looking, beautiful uh, blonde women, and and I think he's trying to get that across in a way. He was he dated Teresa Russell or was married to her for years,
Yeah. Yeah.
and she grew up in Los Angeles and was approached at a really early age to be a model, and just and then I assume after that just kept getting I mean, she's just like a total bombshell, just a really
Hmm.
beautiful woman, and I think she had probably been in that situation over and over again where just people trying to exploit her,
Yes.
and and not appreciating her for who she is, because there's obviously something very like Julie Christie. There's something of real depth behind that pretty face, and
Right.
and so I think that the just the objectification of women in general. There's a couple of scenes in it where at like strip clubs and things like that where he kind of gets that across, and just the absurdity and disgustingness of that, and then the trying to make a woman how you want her to be, um, instead of
Yes.
letting her be herself. And in that final scene where she's half dead and he's taking advantage of her, there's this it cuts to him on her wall. There's all these different representations of women. There's like a sculpture of a woman,
Hmm.
and then there's all these different pictures of women, and Art Garfunkel goes up to one of one of the pictures of this woman and tries to straighten the picture out, but it keeps like moving back to where it was, and it's just a real short cut to that scene. But yeah, I think that those themes kind of dominate it. But I think the all around theme is just that kind of academic, analytical, uh, materialistic, Freudian type um, becoming kind of trying to possess and change and contain. Um, there's another scene in it where the camera concentrates on that Renaissance picture of a unicorn that's held inside of a
Mm-hmm.
gate, like a circular gate, um, and
Mm-hmm.
Art
Mm-hmm.
Garfunkel's like staring at it. And I think that this idea of trying to contain something that's very natural and trying to modify it or turn it into something that you would like it to be, and it keeps slipping out of your hands, um, and and thankfully she survives. I think it would be just too grim of a movie if she
Yes,
died
really.
in the end, but. But the final scene is just so like devastating, where he's in New York and he's getting into a cab and he sees her from behind and he's like, is that her? And she turns around and looks at him and she recognizes that it's him, but she doesn't show any surprise at all and just has a total poker face and then turns around
Yes.
again, and he's just, and you can tell that he's just like utterly devastated, right? But yeah, I think that to me those were the main themes of the film.
Well, uh, yeah, that's you have an impressive way of finding themes. I I I I keep getting going. Yes, that is a theme. It does have a theme. I go from scene to scene, and I really
Right.
uh, I
It's
miss
good.
that often. But what, as you were speaking, I was thinking, this is the dark side of My Fair Lady.
Yeah.
This is My Fair Lady, and as a horror movie. Uh, and if you see the British film, the play that My Fair Lady is based on, it's a musical version of Shaw's play Pygmalion,
Yeah.
and there's an excellent uh, English film made in the late 1930s of Pygmalion. That's, if you can find that film, I highly recommend it, because it's not cute the way My Fair Lady is cute.
Right.
Uh, it's, and I say that though I adore Audrey Hepburn, but not in that film. The play itself is not cute, and it is excellently done, where the Audrey Hepburn character, whose name I cannot think of right now, is played seriously, and and it's the same basic thing of him trying to mold a woman, a man trying to mold a woman into what he wants her to be. Uh, but yeah, this is My Fair Lady. Bad Timing is My Fair Lady taken to the max,
Yeah.
as as a film really of horror, because I think that was my sense coming out of it, that I'd seen something horrible, and horror in that sense. You know, it wasn't trying to frighten me, but it frightened me.
Yeah. I think it really isn't he was really trying to indict Freudianism too in the movie. And it, I mean the guy the Art Garfunkel character, they have scenes of him where he's working for NATO and he goes to the NATO headquarters, and they're like giving him files on uh, different people that they want him to psychologically profile, and and then one of them is the Denholm Elliott character, and he sees her picture in that file, right? And
Yes.
and it really kind of it got across how institutionalized that viewpoint of human nature was. I mean, like Freudianism made it its way into law, basically. You know, like there were, you know, like if you wanted to commit somebody or something, you know,
Right.
a lot of these things were based on Freudianism, and it's just a totally, I mean, at least in my mind, it's a totally bankrupt viewpoint on how humans work that really kind of looks at humans as animals in a sense. But I think that was, I mean, there's a lot of.
It turned into that. It turned into that.
Yeah.
I would defend Freud.
Yeah.
In a sense, in the sense of he himself. It's like Carl Jung, who said that he was not a Jungian. Freud was not a Freudian.
Huh.
You know, in the sense that he discovered for Western thought the idea of the unconscious, and his model for it was crude. But
I don't think that he did, though. I don't think that he. I mean, that's something as old as you know. I mean, Plato talked about the unconscious. You know, I think he had an idea of what the unconscious was, but I don't think that idea was, you know, came from him.
Well, that's why I said for Western thought, because though the idea was in literature and art from the beginning, it wasn't treated as an idea. If you look at the philosophers and if you look at the scientists, going up to the 19th century, through the 19th century, it wasn't treated as a serious idea that way. It was ever present in art, but in modes of thinking, it wasn't considered. And Freud, his strength was to make people consider it. What happened to Freudianism is a whole other subject.
Yeah.
And I agree with you on that. I mean, if you have two people who have the license to do it, they can commit you to a mental hospital in the United States anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not disagreeing with that at all.
Yeah, I was simplifying. I mean, it's easy to simplify those things like Freud or even Jung, but you're right that's it. I think it probably became something that he didn't want it to become.
And once the power structure decides something is useful,
yeah,
they'll turn it to their own ends. Period. You know, so there's that.
Right.
But with this film, getting back to that, the sense of something horrific happening, that My Fair Lady charms you out of what's actually going on. This person being manipulated to the extent that this person is manipulated, the cruelty of that.
Yeah, it's kind of like Vertigo, too.
Yes, a lot like Vertigo. In fact, Vertigo is the Hitchcock film that's most like Roeg, or Roeg is most like Vertigo, since Vertigo came 20 years before Roeg touched the camera-ish. We haven't talked about Hitchcock. That's a whole other thing.
Yeah. Did you want to say something about The Man Who Fell to Earth?
Well, I understand and see your point with preferring Bad Timing and Don't Look Now to The Man Who Fell to Earth and Walkabout. But for me, it's interesting. For me, Don't Look Now and Bad Timing were things I couldn't look at twice, and I take my own personal responsibility for that. It says more about me than the movies, probably. Well, Walkabout and The Man Who Fell to Earth, both in different ways, opened my eyes to things, and in ways my eyes hadn't been opened before. And interestingly, they're both kind of the same film, but inside out of each other, in the sense that in Walkabout, these children who are taken by their father in a Volkswagen out into the outback of Australia, where he wants to kill them. And the girl, she's about 14 or something, 16 maybe, 16 more likely, and a boy of about 7 or 8. The girl realizes something's terribly wrong, and at the last minute she can do it, takes her little brother and runs. He's looking for, you hear the father looking for them. Then he sets his car on fire, as I recall, and kills himself, leaving the children stranded in the outback, which is not a desert like the way the Mojave is a desert, but is a place where you have to know how to survive. There isn't much water. It is a wilderness. It goes on forever. It's most of the island, continent, land of Australia, and they are befriended. It looks like the David Gulpilil tribesman who was on Walkabout. That's the initiation that he must undergo to be an adult in his tribe. It's clear he hasn't seen white people before, that this is a tribe that has kept its tribal quality completely. And he takes them under his wings as though they're some kind of strange animals. Of course they are. He sees they're unprotected. He takes responsibility for them. In this sense, he's a gentleman, in the finest sense of that word. He sees them. They're on his Walkabout. So in Walkabout, you have to behave as though the inner and the outer are the same. That's the real lesson that it teaches. And within his framework, this boy and this girl are as though he's dreamt them. They've come into his Walkabout somehow, and so they're important by virtue of that. And he cares for them, and they're going. Various things happen, and then and if you see the director's cut, I don't think it was in the original, but the cut you see now, he actually passes. He on their Walkabout, he sees this white settlement down a hill, long slope down, and passes it by. It's like he's not really seeing it. He doesn't even think to bring these two into that settlement. Not like he's keeping them captive. It's a mysterious moment in the film, but he just sees that, and he's on his Walkabout. He has nothing to do with that, and they're on his Walkabout, and he doesn't connect them with that. They find this place to take shelter. I may be getting ahead of myself. Then he sees, and they don't see. I think it's he has camped them. They've been going for days, presumably. And he sees these white hunters in jeeps just wantonly killing wild animals. And for him, this is a complete horror. And he's not going to hurt the young woman and her brother, but he also has to cleanse himself of what he saw and of taking care of these whites. And he, in effect, does a ceremony in which he dances himself to death. And at the very end, she has nowhere to go but back into civilization. They find a road. They get picked up. We see her at the very end. She's making dinner, it's daylight, but cutting meat with a knife. She's having these flashbacks. Her husband comes home. He's doing the same thing her father had done. She's in the normal life that failed her so disastrously, and she's back in it, and there is no other place for her to be. And yet she's seen something else once. And then it closes with that a Houseman poem. I can't remember the first verse, but the second verse goes something like, here is that land of lost content. I see it shining still, a happy highway where I went and cannot come again. I see it shining plain, a happy highway where I went and cannot come again. And I had a sort of hypnotic effect seeing that film. I saw that film about 4 times in a row. And again, I wasn't a critic when I saw it. I saw it before I went west. I guess it came out in 72, something like that. And then the Man Who Fell to Earth, we may not have time for.
All right. Yeah, I didn't want to just have a whole show about The Man Who Fell to Earth. Not because I don't like the movie. I like the movie a lot, but just my whole take on it is kind of simple, and I don't have that much to say about it, you know. Yeah, but it's definitely a good movie, and I love Walkabout too. I could watch Jenny Agutter for hours and hours. Not because she's like sexy or anything. There's just something very, I don't know, just cheerful and spunky about her, I guess. But
yes, and it's
innocent.
It's youth before it's been touched.
Yeah.
You know, she really is representative of a youthfulness that's in everybody. You know, it's not it transcends gender in her case. You're looking at youthful spirit, embodied, and I don't think anybody's ever embodied it as vividly in a film.
Yeah, she retained that.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yep, say it again.
She retained that aspect. One day we should talk about American Werewolf in London. I don't know if you remember that movie, but
I didn't see it again, but yeah, I can do that.
You should watch it again. It's very good. It's John Landis, but it's a horror movie, and it's actually very deep and very symbolic. It's about like two Jewish friends that go on vacation in Scotland, and they're walking through the moors one night, and they stop at this tiny little Scottish town, and and they walk into a pub there, and it's very sinister, like everybody's staring at them and everything, and they tell them not to go out on the moors, and then they go out on the moors anyway, and his friend gets attacked by a werewolf, and he gets injured by the werewolf, so now he's a werewolf, but he ends up in the hospital from the attack, and the nurse is played by Jenny Agutter, and he ends up having an affair with her, but she's great in that movie too. But yeah, if you get a chance, see that. It's a really good movie. But yeah.
I was writing a movie on George Orwell. This was 1989, 90, and I was working for Hugh Hudson.
Right.
Who's going to be the director of this.
Yeah.
And I was in England, and his manor house was on Dartmoor,
yeah,
which is the one that Sherlock Holmes tells you not to go out on in any circumstances. and I went to a pub on the moor, and they looked at me like that.
Yeah.
and everyone in that pub, looked like they came from families that had been on that moor for 2,000 or 3,000 years.
Yeah.
And I looked like a complete Martian in comparison. and the only thing anybody ever said to me there was, "Don't go out on the moor." No, seriously. And the reason was very simple: that fogs came in on the moor, and when you were in those fogs, even people who knew the moor might step off the paths, and there were bugs that, like as in The Hound of the Baskervilles, would suck you down in minutes. and a couple of people went out of their way, people I didn't know, to tell me that if I was caught on the moor in a fog, stay right where I was on solid ground. Just sit there or stand there or whatever, but don't move until the fog cleared.
Yeah.
So on that note,
yeah,
the fog is clearing.
That's in American Werewolf in London, the friend that gets killed by the werewolf is played by Griffin Dunne, and and he keeps reappearing because I guess the when you're a werewolf, when you get killed by a werewolf, you can't leave the earth, like you're like wandering the earth until the werewolf is killed, and so the his best friend, who is now a werewolf, Griffin Dunne, keeps telling him that he has to kill himself or else like he'll be doomed to walk the earth so he keeps coming back to his friend, but every time he comes back he's more rotten, like his face is falling apart more and everything. There's a lot of like John Landis kind of funny stuff in the movie, but yeah, it's a really good one. You should see it. And speaking of Griffin Dunne, I was actually thinking a movie that we could talk about might be After Hours. Do you remember that movie?
Mm-hmm. I do.
I just thought it was kind of a cool New York movie, and I it's probably my favorite Scorsese movie, and I thought maybe we could talk about that sometime, but yeah, in the future.
I could see it this week. We can talk about it next week. I could see both of them.
Okay. Yeah.
You wanted to talk about Eric Romer.
Oh, right. Yeah. I wasn't sure if you'd be able to retrieve any of his movies. But,
I haven't been yet, but I can try.
Just look for The Green Ray, and we could talk about that. The Rayon Vert, I guess it would be called. But, yeah. Okay. I'm going to shut it down.
Okay.